The Astana Nurul Iman shimmered under the moon, its golden domes glowing against the Southeast Asian night. Light spilled from every window, as if the palace itself held 1,000 stars. Inside, a grand banquet buzzed with music and careful laughter. Diplomats and royals mingled, their smiles practiced. In the midst of this splendor stood Arvin, a young Filipino server, nearly invisible, blending into the background. Yet in this palace of 1,000 lights, he saw more than anyone realized. The night was just beginning. Arvin's journey began far from palaces, on the dusty roads of Laguna, Philippines. His father, Mang Lito, drove a tricycle from dawn, teaching Arvin the dignity of honest work. His mother, Aling Nena, filled their home with faith, kindness, and the scent of cooking rice. She taught Arvin to notice the world, to help without being asked. Kindness costs nothing, but it is worth everything, she'd say. As a boy, Arvin was known for his quiet awareness. Once, he saved a child from drowning, acting without hesitation or need for praise. These small acts shaped him, a hero in the making, humble and alert. Life in Laguna was simple, but full of love and lessons. He learned hard work from his father, faith, and observation from his mother. He understood that making a difference didn't require wealth or power. His character was built on humility and responsibility. These were the values he carried when he left home for a foreign palace. Arvin's foundation was not gold or marble, but the quiet strength of his upbringing. That strength would soon be tested in ways he never imagined. Arvin's first steps into Astana Nurul Iman left him breathless. The palace was vast, its grandeur overwhelming, a world away from Laguna. He clutched his small bag and his mother's prayer book, feeling both awe and fear. Yet the familiar warmth of the air and echoes of Filipino history in the palace's art gave him comfort. He was part of a long tradition of Filipinos seeking better lives abroad. During training, Arvin learned from seasoned staff, many also Filipino. Mang Jose, a senior butler, taught him, "Anticipate needs, that's the secret." Arvin became a master observer, memorizing guests' preferences and the Sultan's routines. He noticed the stress of advisors, the joy of palace children, and never gossiped. Service, he learned, was about creating comfort and respect, not just carrying plates. His humility let him see the palace not as a servant, but as a silent guardian. He watched, learned, and absorbed everything. Arvin's quiet strength made him invaluable, even if he remained unseen. In this world of gold and marble, he was a steady presence, and soon, his vigilance would prove vital. Tonight, tension simmered beneath the grand hall's glitter. A major trade deal was at stake. Diplomats' smiles were tight, their eyes wary. Arvin, refilling glasses, caught fragments of urgent conversation, deadline, disagreement, consequences. Even the food became a test. A rare fruit, meant as an honor, left foreign guests confused. Arvin noticed an ambassador's wife flustered by a spill. He was there instantly, offering a cloth with a respectful bow. Small acts eased the strain, smoothing over cultural gaps. He managed moments, not just meals, signaling musicians to lower the volume, guiding staff to clear plates quietly. The powerful focused on big problems. Arvin handled the small ones. He was a quiet force of calm amid unspoken anxieties. The banquet was a stage for high-stakes negotiation, but Arvin's attention to detail kept the evening from unraveling. He moved with purpose, his senses sharp. No one noticed the storm brewing beneath the surface, except Arvin. He didn't know it yet, but his vigilance would soon be tested by a crisis no one expected. In a room full of power, it was the humble who saw what mattered. Tonight, Arvin's watchfulness would become the palace's greatest asset. The biggest problem was about to reveal itself. The main course arrived, roasted lamb, the Sultan's favorite. The mood lightened, conversation grew genuine. Arvin watched from the wall, always alert. Then he saw it. The Sultan's smile faltered, a discreet cough into his napkin. No one else noticed. The guest beside him kept talking, but Arvin recognized distress in the Sultan's eyes. The Sultan coughed again, tried to sip water, but couldn't swallow. His hand went to his throat, a silent plea. The room buzzed on, oblivious. Arvin's mother's words echoed him. "The biggest problems have the smallest beginnings?" The Sultan's face changed color, panic rising. Still, no one saw. Arvin's focus narrowed, the world faded except for the struggling monarch. The Sultan tried to stand, but was failing. This was no longer a small problem, it was a crisis. The ruler of a nation was suffocating, unseen by all but one. Arvin's heart pounded. He was just a server. What could he do? Fear gripped him, but he knew he had to act. The moment of truth had arrived. The hall froze as the Sultan's struggle became obvious. Glasses tipped, a princess gasped, the music stopped. Bodyguards hesitated, unprepared for this silent threat. Panic spread. Chaos threatened to take over. I stood by the wall, torn between fear and duty. Protocol screamed at me to stay put. Touching the Sultan could mean disgrace, even deportation. But my mother's words echoed, "Kindness costs nothing." I remembered my father's pride, the child I'd once saved, and my first aid training. The Sultan was not just a ruler. He was a father, a husband, a human being. In a split second, I chose action over fear. I pushed away from the wall, moving with purpose through the panicked crowd. Hands tried to stop me, but I pressed on. My destination. The head table. My mission. Save the Sultan, or at least try. I was no longer just a servant. I was a rescuer. The world watched, stunned as I reached the Sultan's side. I ignored the shouts, focused only on the man fighting for his life. This was my moment of decision. I would not let fear win. I would not stand by and watch a man die. I acted, driven by everything I'd learned. The next seconds would define everything. I reached the Sultan, ignoring the guards' protests. "I know what to do," I declared, moving behind the monarch. Adrenaline surged as I wrapped my arms around his waist, hands positioned for the Heimlich. The hall was silent, every eye on us. I performed the first thrust. Nothing. The Sultan's face darkened, hope fading. "Let me try again," I pleaded, desperation in my voice. I tried a second time, still nothing. The Sultan's body went limp. A woman screamed. Failure threatened to overwhelm me, but my mother's voice echoed, "Have faith." I looked at the Sultan, prayed, and tried one last mighty push. This time it worked. A piece of lamb shot out, landing on the tablecloth. The Sultan gasped, air rushing into his lungs. Color returned to his face. He coughed, but he was breathing. Relief swept the room. The impossible had happened. A humble server had saved a king. The hall erupted in applause, but I was lost in the moment, trembling with emotion. The Sultan turned to me, gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "You saved my life." He asked my name. I answered, barely audible. "Arvin, Your Majesty." The Sultan smiled, genuine and warm. "Tonight, we have seen true courage," he announced to all. It came from a young man with a good heart. In that moment, I was no longer invisible. The applause thundered through the hall. Diplomats, ministers, and royals surrounded me, their faces filled with awe. The guards who tried to stop me now looked on with respect. The Sultan, regaining strength, addressed the room. Courage can be found anywhere, in anyone. He ordered I be honored and rewarded. Guests shook my hand, praised my bravery. The French ambassador, teary-eyed, called me a credit to my country. An elderly princess thanked me profusely. I was no longer invisible. I was the hero of the night. Overwhelmed, I realized I hadn't sought glory. I'd simply done what was right. The palace, once intimidating, now felt like a place of belonging. My humble roots were my strength. In saving a king, I'd found my own courage. The world saw a hero. I saw a son, honoring his family's lessons. That night, I stood tall, not for the applause, but for the values that shaped me. In a palace of 1,000 lights, a boy from Laguna had become a beacon, and the world would remember. Later, in a quiet room, I tried to process what had happened. The Sultan's children had thanked me. The palace buzzed with my story. Filipino workers called me Bayani, hero, sharing tales of courage from home and abroad. My act became a symbol of the Filipino spirit. Resilient, humble, brave. Alone, I called my mother in Laguna. She answered, worried. I broke down, telling her everything. I spoke of fear, duty, and the moment I remembered her words. There was a long silence, then her voice, thick with pride. "You did good, my son. You listened to your heart." Her words weren't about heroism, but about character. I hadn't just saved a sultan, I'd fulfilled the promise of my upbringing. In that moment, peace washed over me. I was a son who had made his mother proud. That was the greatest honor of all. The palace would remember my name, but my heart belonged to Laguna, and to the lessons that made me who I am.